Hi, my name is Judy and I'm the City Stitcher, and welcome to my Flosstube channel. Today is Sunday, February the 19th, and it is a gray, overcast, cloudy day, and we are expecting snow. It's supposed to start snowing tonight and snow for a couple of days. The weather forecasters are, they have a range of how much snow they're expecting us to get, so it will be, according to them, anywhere between 6 inches and 12 inches of snow. So that's going to muck up the roads quite nicely. And then, of course, it's going to be followed by bitterly cold weather. Bitterly cold. So I think one of the days, like Wednesday or Thursday, I think the high for the day is supposed to be minus 20 degrees Celsius, which is about minus 10 Fahrenheit. So frosty. Frosty, frosty, frosty. Yes, we've been having a fairly reasonable winter so far in 2023. If you want to see more on that, check out Cheryl, Happy Handcraft Studio, because she's doing a temperature blanket that she's crocheting. And when she hauls it out, you can see the colors. Anyway, she'll be getting some different colors this week. Anyway, not temperatures I'm fond of. It's a brief stint. It will be fine. I will survive. It'll be okay. But I just looked at it and went, ooh, those aren't good numbers for me. As usual, as soon as I got off making the video for last week, I went, oh right, I forgot to say, by the way, and so now it's belated, Happy Valentine's Day to you. As well, for those of you who are big followers of football and were eagerly awaiting the Super Bowl, I hope you enjoyed the Super Bowl game. I, of course, watched none of it. Technically, my line is I always listen to the news in the morning and I get my sports comments so that, you know, if I need to pretend like I know anything about sports, you know, usually the short recap in the morning news is all that I need to know. So last week, at the beginning of the week, I remember I would have known who won the Super Bowl. I think it's the Chiefs. I don't know. Anyway, if you were into football and you were really excited about the Super Bowl, whether it was for the football or for the halftime show or the commercials or whatever it was, I hope you enjoyed a really good Super Bowl. I didn't do any of the Super Bowl things. I sat and recorded a video and uploaded it and did all that kind of good stuff. So where I am in Alberta in Canada, tomorrow is our statutory holiday, which is called Family Day. So happy Family Day to those of you that are celebrating Family Day here in Canada. There are several provinces now that celebrate Family Day, not all of them, but several of them do celebrate Family Day. And tomorrow is also President's Day down in the US. So it seems to be a statutory holiday for a large number of people. So happy February long weekend. To you. I hope that means that you get some really great stitching in, because certainly that's my plan tomorrow. We'll get to that when I talk about plans, because I've got very specific plans, but we'll talk about that. With that, just wanted to do a little bit of some responses to the comments that came in on last week's video. Thank you so much for the comments. Love getting the comments. Love having the conversation with all of you. I am behind on actually electronically responding to comments. As you know, I do try to sort of respond to comments live when I'm doing the following week's video, but I do need to respond electronically as well, so those are coming. So thank you to those of you who had nice things to say about 9/11 and shared some of your remembrances. There were a couple of people who shared their stories about family members who were also in an unknown status until later in the day on 9/11, and that's certainly a feeling I'm familiar with. You know, fortunately for the people who related their stories to me, they had happy endings. I'm always mindful that while my story had a happy ending, there were a lot of people who they didn't have a good ending. So I always think about them, and really for a lot of people who were affected by that day, you know, I had post 9/11, I actually had family members who went down as part of some charitable organizations that were providing support to the workers who were trying to clear the rubble and retrieve remains, and providing some counseling support. And one of them, in fact, has some health complications that the doctors are thinking are related to the chemicals that were in the air post 9/11, and how much time he spent down there, you know, providing support to the workers that had also a really trying job. So yeah, lots of people impacted. It was really interesting. Somebody made a comment that, you know, anybody who's graduated, you know, even in the last, you know, since the pandemic started, for any of those kids graduating high school, none of them would have been alive when 9/11 occurred, and that 9/11 to them is history. It's something that's in the history books. And I think I was watching someone where they said they were going like, it's so weird. It's like our parents remember 9/11, whereas to them it's just something that's in a textbook. So it's also a little bit of perspective on that. But thank you for the comments, and thank you to those of you who shared your stories as well. And I'm very, very happy for you that your stories had positive outcomes like mine. Marion asked me a question about when I'm working on 28 count. So it's generally for me, I am using 2 strands of floss over 2 fiber threads when I'm working on 28 count. The only time I'm not is generally if there are specialty stitches involved. So when I was working on Twilight Star back in January from Patricia Ann Designs, that was done on 28 count, but because there were specialty stitches, the number of threads that I was using and the number of fibers that I was stitching over are not necessarily consistent because there was a lot of specialty stitches in that. But for example, on Spring ABCs, which you'll see shortly here, that's being done on a 28 count. I'm using two threads, two strands of floss over 2 fibers of the fabric that I'm using. So that's generally what I do. I don't love doing over 1 stitching. It's not a me thing. You know, this is a hobby. This should be fun for everybody. So if you love doing 1 over 1, great, do that. I don't love doing 1 over 1, so I do other things. I do 2 over 2. And then she also had a really good comment about trying to balance her new starts with her whips, and yep, that's relevant for my stitching this week as well, so stay tuned. You'll see what I did. Trying to balance those 2 things as well. Then just wanted to talk a little bit about monthly Quakers because there were several comments about those. So thank you to all for the positive comments on how the monthly Quakers are coming. Lynette, I really enjoyed your comment because she was commenting that she had not purchased the January because she, like myself, really enjoys something that's quite proportional and symmetrical. And so January was not quite working for her. But now that she's seen my changes, she might have to go back and rethink them, which I encourage you to do because it's a really lovely stitch. As far as I'm concerned, it's a really lovely outcome. And the changes to make it a little more balanced are actually quite simple. So yeah, glad I could help let you rethink your views on the January monthly Quaker. And then I got a question, I forgot to write down who it was from. Somebody asked me how much how much of the Verdal, the 40 count Verdal, did I buy, knowing that I'm planning on doing all 12 months? And the simple answer is I bought a yard. It's technically it's a little bit more than I need, but the way that I parsed the math out, so when I'm in my margins, I do a 3-inch margin on each of the sides, just to give me the ultimate flexibility, because I don't know how I want to finish them. You know, there are people who do narrower margins, but usually I go, those are people who know what they're likely know what they're doing for a finish. I don't know, so I figured 3 inches gives me all the margin I need for whatever finish I end up choosing to do. So I bought a yard, a full yard, and what that allows me to do is adding the 3 inches to each side means that your cut piece per month ends up being 10 inches wide by 12 inches tall. And then the way that I've spaced it out on the yard is that, so the yard is 36 this way and 55 tall. And so I'm doing 12 widthwise by 10, which lets you get 5 in one column. And then you do that again. So we're now up to 24 of the 36 inches, full width. Yes, I know it's 55 and the 10 is really only 50, but you know, you fudge the last little bit, it's fine. So that gives me 10, which means in my last piece, which is 12 inches wide by the full 55 inches long, I'm taking 2 more out of that, so I'm taking 20 inches off of that, which still gives me a fairly reasonable sized piece of fabric left on 40 count. So it's 12 inches by 35 inches long left as leftover. When I was looking at options, you know, a fat half, which would be 27.5 inches by 36. The math actually gets harder that way, and it wasn't as efficient a use of fabric as I felt buying just the full yard, and it gives me leftovers, which that's not necessarily a bad thing either. So that's what I bought, and that's how I have in my head I've structured it. When I cut out the pieces for January, February, what I really did is I took that first strip and cut out the 5 pieces and serged all 5 pieces so they're all ready to go. And then sort of once we get into late April, early May, depending on how I'm feeling, I will cut out the next 5 pieces and get those serged, and I'll wait to do the last couple of pieces until till we get closer. And then I realized the funny thing, I'm just back to the comment about it not being balanced. I was thinking about my framer. He made a comment when I was over there framing something, and he was commenting about how much I really like geometric pieces. And I looked at him I was very confused, because to me a geometric piece means that you like literally have geometric shapes in the artwork that you're doing, which I've seen some of those and a couple of them have appealed to me, but I don't have any of that, and I certainly didn't have anything that I was taking to him for framing. And then he kind of went, really what he means by geometric is that I like things, so even if I have landscapes and things like that, they're very balanced and they're very symmetrical and they're very and I'd taken the mandala in, which is in that case my Egypt mandala was 4 identical sides, so it gives you a very geometrically shaped and proportionate. So I thought that was funny. So when Lynette made her comment, I was like going, it remembered me thinking of my lovely former framer. And then on Nashville, loved the variety of comments about Nashville because it's true to form. There are people who are like me, hoping that all of the designs largely come out with things that don't appeal to them, because it just helps us sort of not want to have a very large shopping list. And then of course we have people who go, I like the comment from Char was like going, 4, you only have 4? My list is like 62. Not that she'll necessarily buy all 62, but to me it's also a reminder that there are always things, there are things coming out for everybody. It's just like fashion. There are some years I look at the color palettes and go, wow, I can't wear any of that, or that particular style doesn't suit me in the slightest, where you go like, well, this is going to be an easy shopping season because I'll just look at the stuff and go, none of that will work for me. And then there are other times where you go like, oh my goodness, this is my season. Everything is in my color palette and in my fit. I used to work with a lady, and it was really quite funny because we were the exact opposites. My color palette versus her color palette, and fits that worked for me versus what worked for her. So the years where I was like going, everything is working for me, would be the years where she's like, there's nothing. And then when it was for her, everything was fantastic, I was like, there's nothing. Anyway, so yes, there's always something in good years and bad years. And yeah, I'm really hoping, again, because I've looked at my stash and going, I'm really hoping that it all works out to be things that everybody else really, really, really loves. Because I have a lot of older things still sitting in my stash waiting to be stitched. And then I had a couple of people who sort of said they also enjoy sort of going through the things and creating the wish list. And then, you know, like I commented last week, unless it's like a limited edition Nashville exclusive thing, you know, the vast majority of things that are being released for Nashville are not one-time things. They will be, for whatever reason, if you go buying it for Nashville isn't going to work for you, for the most part, by the time you hit November of this year, they're still going to be available. And they're going to be available next year as well. And in the meantime, you will have been able to see all those people who stitch things, and in some cases, unfortunately, will have changed the colors on things where you go like, oh, I didn't really like it before, but now that I see that version of it. Anyway, gives you time. You know, with my background in finance, I'm a big one on budgeting and having a budget for things and all that kind of stuff. Don't get me wrong, I can equally be like, blew the budget. Anyway, I'm trying to be mindful of the things, mindful of what I have in my stash. So I really am trying to treat the things that I'm seeing that I'm enjoying at Nashville as rewards. Need to set some goals, and my reward when I accomplish the goal is that then I will get to buy one of the charts from Nashville. All right, so those are the comments from last week. Like I say, thank you so much for those comments. Love having the conversation. I love the perspectives, right? It's as you would expect, right? Nashville, people who go, they're loving everything. The people who have a limited list, the people who are going, I'm hoping for everything to be, I'm making stuff up now, you know, all gnomes and mermaids or whatever it is, you know, chickens, ducks, geese, whatever it is that they don't like. Anyway. With that, let's get into my stitching. It's been a decent stitching week. So we're going to start off, as always, with my ABC chart for this year that I'm starting off with, because I think there might be 2 that I get to do this year. So this is my Little House Needleworks Spring ABCs. I am stitching this on a 32 count Star Sapphire Jobelan. 28 count Star Sapphire Jobelan, and for Marion, 2/2. And I had a good stitching outing last week. So I always have to look at my calendar before I come on here so I know what my plan is. So unlike last year where my goal was to get 1 letter done every 2 weeks so I could be finished the project by the end of the year, because this one is a much smaller chart and it's stitching up much quicker, my goal is that I want to have 1 letter done every week. So I'm ahead of schedule. So by today, I was supposed to have everything down to I. see, even as I said that, I think that's wrong. Hang on, I have my book handy, which I'm using regularly. H. I need to have H. I need to have H done by this week, by the end of today's stitching episode. So clearly that is accomplished. So I'm ahead of schedule by this much. So what did I work on last week? So I finished the flowers up here, as I had talked about last week, and then came down and started working on this tree, which I think I might have a couple more leaves to put on there. I think it's close to being done. The next big task is there's a house. The next one is the house. The house, the lawn, the fence. So that's great. That'll be a fun stitch for today. We'll see how much of that, you know, a couple of really big blocks of color. So we'll see if we can't make some really big progress on that. I don't know that I will get all of it accomplished, but it will put me in really great shape to being close to actually being done almost the way down to L. So yeah, I'm in really great shape for my goals on this one for this year. I'm well ahead of schedule, which is great. Because I might slow down in the next little bit, but we'll talk about that next week and we'll see how it really goes. But so far this is moving along fabulously well. Yes, I just realized I have. All right, that will work. All right, so then on Monday I went, so in my plan for 2023, I have a new start plan for every month. And I looked at my February start and went, you finished your February Quaker, you finished your Jubilee pin cushion ornament, so you deserve a new start. So I decided I was going to start my canvas work piece. So I also have a goal that every year I want to have a canvas piece in the rotation, whether it's in the rotation a lot or just periodically. I wanted to have a canvas work piece going. And so my new start is from Frida's Fancy Stitching, Celebrating Traditional Stitches. This is an exclusive chart to Traditional Stitches in celebration of their 20th anniversary. I saw this one stitched up in advance and waited and waited and waited until it was finally released. Couldn't wait for this one to come out. It is lovely, 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 and the color palette is totally right up my alley. So where did I get to? So this is an interesting, actually I'm just going to hold this up again. This is an interesting piece. So Frida writes fantastic instructions. Fantastic instructions. So if you are looking for a sort of beginner-friendly canvas work piece, Frida has fantastic ones. You can get her charts directly from her site as PDF downloads, not including this one because this one is exclusive to Traditional Stitches. But for her other canvas work ones, you could get them as PDF patterns. So for anybody who is looking for electronic patterns, it's a great way to get them. She's got great diagrams, great instructions. The thing that is unique to this, like if you watched when I was doing the banquet, like you had these, you know, similar, you had sort of specific blocks and you sort of you've completed a block and then worked on your next block. This one is interesting because step one is to outline everything that you see. So you outline all of the 14 sections that are going to be stitched as I call it step 0. and then you start filling them in. This is being done on an 18 count vintage French blue mono canvas. Wait for it, I'm using all of the called for fibers. The color palette is just lovely. So I got all of my blocks outlined as per the instructions, and then I started filling in. This is section number 1. So I am about a third of the way filling that in, but making great progress on that. And when I was originally, so one of our instructions is to mark where your north, east, south, and west. So you know, again, because this is very geometric, very symmetrical. The size of this box and the size of this box are identical. The filling stitches are different, but when you're starting out, it could have been very easily gone this way. Now, for some people, they could go, yes, I put the needle minder here and blah, 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 but I can move my needle minder around. So what I did on mine, which is hard to tell in the camera, is that, so I just used some regular Scotch tape and took a little piece of it, folded it over a little bit so that it'll be easy to pull off. But what this says to me is this is my top left. So regardless of what's going on, when I was stitching the outlines, I always knew where my top left was. And again, to me, I just don't like necessarily marking on my, these aren't scroll rods, what are these? Stretcher bars. Because I will use them for different projects, and where north is on one may not be north on another. So I don't like actually marking on them. This is my marking. I used a piece of Scotch tape. So there you go. This is Karen Watercolors Monsoon. It's a lovely color. It's green and blue. I actually have written it down that I might want to go see if the Karen Water Lilies is just as lovely as the watercolors. Anyway, so yes, I'm a third of the way. I've done all of the outlining. I'm a third of the way through stitching block number 1. So that was my new start for this week. But just like Marion, I need to balance things that I'm starting with actually making progress on older whips. So I also pulled out a whip that was a carryover from last year. You also saw it in January, which is Celtic Snow by Northern Expressions Needlework. I am stitching this on a 28 count Midnight Tryst Jobelan. I don't think you can get Jobelan anymore from by Fabrics by Stephanie. Jobelan is key for this particular colorway because if you get it in the Lugana, it does not come out as blue. If you get it in the linen, it is fine. And to be perfectly honest, I don't remember what she says on the website about what it may look like on Ada. But this pattern is not conducive to working on Ada, given the specialty stitches that's in this. And I made great, I'm very happy with my progress last week. Sorry, I'm just organizing a board here. There we go. And getting rid of some fluff. So my goal was to start working on the specialty stitches on the interior of the snowflake, and I feel like I made really great progress this week. So yes, so you can see, you know, so all of these, you know, you can figure out the specialty stitches because, you know, you saw it last week, 2 weeks ago. I forget when you last saw it. Anyway, so they were moving around fairly rapidly. These ones down here, it's really interesting because they have a multi steps to how you stitch those particular snowflakes. It's like, do this, then do this, then do this, then do this. There's about 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, there's 5 steps according to the instructions. So I did the first one in the order that the instructions told you to do it. And as soon as I did that and I knew what was going on, I did the next 3 doing it my way. They look the same, and so I'm happy with the outcome. I like my way better. The way they provide the instructions is really good so that you understand everything that's occurring and how you're getting all of that together, because it's a combination of multiple specialty stitches. But yes. So my goal for this, actually, so I'm just going to take we're going to drift a little bit into plans for next week. The stitching time I have left available this month I really only have today, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and then we hit Wednesday, which is Ash Wednesday, which is the beginning of Lent, which means that's when I begin my Lent stitching. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Sunday, of course, I'm working on my ABCs piece, so we can keep that rolling along. And then I want to make progress on this. So my goal, what I'm hoping between Monday and Tuesday stitching is that I can finish getting in all of the specialty stitches that I need to do to finish filling in this center section with specialty stitches. Don't kid yourself, there's, you know, a bajillion beads left to go to finish out that center section. But it's not that bad, to the point where, you know me, I had to count them up. I have 22 specialty stitches left to get in, and then I will have done it. And 22, I'm quite confident that I can get that done. So that will put me in a really great position that the next time I start working on this, that will allow me, because I cannot do this inner border until everything else is done, because this needs to be done where you put the beads in first and then stitch around it. So this is going to start to get stitched as I'm putting the beads in. So I need to get all of this outer border, which is huge, and sort of these outer medallions. But yeah, so my goal is to get, I'm only really planning on getting one of these done, because then I can start stitching on the border. Anyway, for a variety of reasons. Anyway, so my plan is to finish getting the specialty stitches in before we hit Ash Wednesday, because that means, so far this year, it means I will have finished all of the cross stitches in the top half, as well as filling in all of the center. I think that's great progress on this project so far this year, and that will be where we're at by the end of February. A lot left to go, a lot left to go. Don't kid yourself, but it will be. I'm very pleased with my progress on this one so far, and like I say, 22 specialty stitches. I'm feeling quite confident I can get that done before we hit Wednesday. And then, yeah, I'll be feeling really good about where I'm leaving this off at. Again, sort of getting into sort of the plans without finishing. I've still got one more piece to show you. Oops. And the needle minders are stuck together. The other thing that I want to get accomplished before we hit Wednesday is to finish off this first block. Like I say, so I've done a third of it. It's just a repeat down, further down and along in the other direction. So I'm hoping to also get that done before we hit Wednesday. when I have my Lent start. I think totally doable. Totally doable. I'm feeling pretty good about it. And then on Saturday, we had the stitching at the library. So it was really great. We had someone new who came to join us. So it was really great meeting her, and she's found her way to the library. So we're hoping that she will come back again. So great time gathering with the ladies at the Stitching with the Library. And as I discussed in January, I have specific a collection of library projects where my theoretical goal, because wait till you hear how I change it, is that I will work, these are the projects that I'm going to work on predominantly while I'm stitching at the library. Didn't necessarily, even in January, I started at the library, but I finished it at home. So in February, I had another new start. I don't have a picture of it. I forgot to, I'm pretty sure I've got a picture of it somewhere. But it is Deb's Winter Biscornu. It is from the Winter 2021 Punch Needle and Primitive Stitcher magazine. I have already stitched this once. I stitched this as my StitchCon Small for the Smalls Exchange when I attended StitchCon in 2022. And I really loved my project. I loved how it came out. I loved how it looked at the end. And even when I gave it away, I was like, well, you're clearly going to have to stitch one of those for yourself. So I'm stitching one for myself now. I am stitching this on a 28 count White Opalescent Lugana. I am using the called for DMC threads, so it's just 2 colors of DMC. So if you didn't like doing it in blues, you could do it in whatever 2 colors you wanted to do. It was typical of me. I got very little stitching done at the library. So I think I pretty much got the light blue done while I was at the library. That's not a lot of stitching for 3 hours. We had a lot of things to talk about. Anyway, so I came home. So this is where it's like stitching at the library. Well, stitching at the library and then following it up with some additional stitching at home. So that's my library stitching piece. Anyway, so I came home and put in the first snowflake. So one of these corners. So in totality, given that there are 2 sides, the design is identical front and back, but the colors are reversed. So on side A, the snowflakes are in the dark blue, and when you side B, the snowflakes will be the light blue, and this will be the dark blue. So far I am at 9% finished with this particular project. So unlike the January library project where I got it started and finished it in 1 day, which meant it was a really great January piece, February is going to take me longer, and it's going to have to come out again the next time as well. So when I look at my stitching for the next few days, to the extent I have any extra time, so once I get my Celtic Snow specialty stitches finished and finish my block on my canvas work piece, I might just keep this out and maybe get a little more stitched in and keep going on this one. We'll see. See how fast I stitch. All right, so those are my projects for this week and a little bit about my plans. Like I say, I will have it's a new start for Lent this year. I am not planning on working on Jerusalem for Lent. Sorry, girly. She really likes when Jerusalem comes out. But having done Jerusalem for 2 Lents back to back, different versions of how I was doing the stitching for those Lent stitching, I'm giving myself a little bit of a Lent break from Jerusalem, and I am working on a completely different project this year, which we're going to talk about next week. but I'm really looking forward to getting it started. I'm really looking forward to seeing how it goes, because by the time I see you next Sunday, I will have had 4 days of stitching on it, and I will know how my plan is shaping up. So the funny thing is, as early as 4 days into Lent, I'll know whether my Lent stitching plan has a shot of actually coming to fruition, or if it's already starting to head off the rails. We'll see. Check back next week and see how that's going. But I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah, come back next week and see what I'm stitching on. All right, let's get into some Stashquisitions. So I've got some, I think they're slightly humorous Stashquisitions. So one of the things I have is I went out and I bought myself a package of stickers. They're just stars. I have 2,160 stars in this little package that I got. So clearly some multicolored ones, and then a lot of just straight up gold ones. And I don't remember which Flosstuber it was that I was watching, but I watched them and I went, you know what, I want to do that too. So I have always said that I didn't really think that I was a sticker person. So, you know, there are lots of people out there that are in doing the stickers and decorating their book of days and all that kind of stuff. And I was kind of like, I'm not sure I really need that. And quite frankly, I feel like I need all the writing room that I can get. So I don't think I'm going down the sticker route. I acknowledge that it's a slippery slope. So we'll see how I do. But my plan on how I'm going to use these is I'm going to use the multicolored ones. So anything that is not gold, I'm going to put into my planner, which I am using. I will put one of the colored stars when I have a start. And when I have a finish, it's going to be a gold star. Yes, it's my childhood come to life again. Gold star when I finish something. Multicolored when I start. So I got those stickers, so they go over here because I will be using them in my book. And then I placed the order online at Michael's so I could just run in and pick it up. So I picked up this box from Michael's. It's a wooden, completely unfinished box, so I still need to figure out what I'm planning on doing for like the actual finishing of the wood. But here's the funny part. So I have bought this because this is so the answer is there's a stitching piece that the designer has said the way that they have shown it, the stitched piece is displayed finished on this particular box. So first of all, this is a box from Michael's, which means as someone who is not in the United States, there was a shot that I would be able to get this in Canada because it was from Michael's. And so it turns out it is available in Canada. So I got it at a reasonable price. It was a reasonable price even before, but then I had a coupon code, so that was even better. So I have bought it. So the funny thing is, yes, I've bought this as a finishing piece for a chart I don't even own yet. Don't worry, it's gonna come. I'm not worried about it. I'm not gonna be able to get the chart. I'm gonna be able to get the chart. I was more concerned whether there was any hope that I would be able to get the box. I always find it interesting when people show finishes where they go, I've got X piece, you know, whatever it is that they got. A lot of the time they're getting it from Hobby Lobby, which I just sort of go, yes, but I don't have a Hobby Lobby. And I think Hobby Lobby, you can ship to Canada, but of course international shipping is not, that's a not fun number to add on to your order. So I don't do that. But Michael's, it was great. Local to me, had the box, ordered it online, went and picked it up, used a coupon. It's great. And at some point I will get the chart. I don't need to get the chart right away, but I have the finishing piece for it. And then I was over at my parents' place, which is also going to lead into the topic as well. But they were doing some cleaning out, which we are totally fine with as children. And they had a stack of frames and said, do you want any? So I did. I didn't take all of them, but I did take a number of them, and this one is just falling apart on me. Hang on a minute. Let me put it back together. There we go. So they're fairly simple. I'm assuming this is 4x6, just a plain black frame, thick black frame with a stand. I'm sure I'll be able to find a use for that. Not only did I have one, I got two, and then an 8x10. Now there is some matting in this already, so whether I keep the matting or do something else with that, but I had a laugh. I think I've made this comment before. For my dad's aesthetic, although technically he doesn't apply this to artwork generally, he likes a good black frame. Can you see that? Anyway, so I looked at the pile. These are the ones that I took. There were certainly a number of frames that I left behind because I didn't think I was going to need them. And then while I was there, they had a few other things that they were sending home with me, and that leads into the topic for this week, which is let's talk signing your work. I just realized I should probably have one that I have done the signing on, so hang on just a second. I will stand up and just run over here. Now, some people think that this is I'm going to air quote, controversial topic. I don't think this is a controversial topic. Just like anything else that is stitching related, it is a personal preference, and you do what works for you. I just want to take this opportunity to advocate for actually stitching your initials into the pieces that you're working on. So, for example, I'm going to pick on the monthly Quakers again because, you know, they're somewhat handy. Right, so here is my and a board. Okay, here's my January Quaker. And down here, I have put in my initials in the year that I stitched it. Now, as I found out when I was doing the monthly cottages, once I decide on my signature for the series, that's what I'm doing on all of them. Sometimes I vary my signature, but since I decided what I was doing in January, I'm doing the exact same thing on all of them. And there's my initials and the year again. And I do try to make sure that I sign all of my stuff. I was also looking at saying my Jubilee pin cushion ornament does not have my initials in it, and I'm not exactly sure how I would fit them in. Right, because it's a little harder to put it in there, but I don't know. I haven't decided yet. Check back later. I don't have to make a final decision until I'm getting ready to fully finish it. And if nothing else, it's in my Xstitch app with my date that it's finished, so I could put it in even a year from now if it took me that long. But anyway, I put my initials in, and again, that's because when I was starting out stitching, the needleworkers within my family, you sign your stuff. But as I discovered, that wasn't always the case. So one of the things that I picked up while I was over at my parents' is this picture. So I took it to stitching at the library, so the ladies there got to see it. So this is a picture of Lake O'Hara. This was stitched for one of my aunts that has passed away. And as I am the last needleworker in my family, this was coming my way, which is totally fine with me. I like this picture. And in fact, today, I was heading to the front door to pick up the Amazon package that was being delivered today, and went, oh, that's where that should go. So once I'm done talking about it here on Flosstube, I know exactly where this is going to get hung up in my house. But so I picked it up, and I know which of my relatives it was stitched for, because her name is on the back of it. But I had to look at my mother and go, okay, but who stitched it? You know, so in the generation above, so my mother's generation, there were a couple of needleworkers, and in like her mother and her sisters were all needleworkers, as was her, so my great-grandmother on my mother's side, all were needleworkers. So there were lots of possibilities as to who potentially would have stitched this for my aunt. And there's nobody signed it. So there are no initials in this particular piece. And so it was my grandmother. So my grandmother stitched it for her daughter, my aunt. But her initials aren't on it. So, you know, if her initials had been in it, I wouldn't have had to have asked my mother, right? I would have been able to look at the initials and known who it was in the family tree. And certainly for pieces that are being passed down, those are really helpful, because, you know, if they're going outside of the family, they may not be quite as helpful, but certainly if they're being passed down within the family, those are very, very helpful as to who actually stitched it. Because you may know, and your child may know, but your grandchild, you know, if it got passed down, you know, when they were relatively young, they may not exactly know. So I'm going to rectify that, because I am going to go get a sticker and put all of the information on it, including who it was stitched for. I'm actually going to put her full name on it, and who did the stitching. I'm keeping it in this frame. Yes, it's an older style framing, but I'm keeping it in this frame because this is how it was framed for my aunt. So yeah. So yeah, I'm advocating put your initials in your work. It's interesting because I've got the needlepoint picture that my grandmother stitched for me is over here, and her initials are on that. So somewhere along the line, she finally clued in that she should really be doing it on the pieces that she stitches. Hang on a minute, just need to shuffle again. Because certainly her sister did that on hers. So I also got these two pieces, and we're going to talk about these ones. These are pieces of petty point that her sister did. And there is her first initial with her last name. That's her married name. So she certainly she certainly made sure all of that information was in there. So this is one of them. And then this is the other one that she did. Now I will put this out as a question to you lovely floss tubers. We talked about it a little bit at the library. I know that my great aunt did these. These, from an aesthetic perspective, are not necessarily my taste. So I'm having that struggle going. Like, I know why my mom gave them to me, because I'm the last needle worker. I don't necessarily love them, but I would like them to go to a decent home. So if you've got really great suggestions as to what I might do with these two pieces, throw them down in the comment section down below. Anyway, so yes, so this is an example of someone who signed their work, which means, well, and given what her last name was, it's not the most common name. If her last name was Smith, that might not necessarily give you a lot of clues if you were trying to necessarily locate who the person was from a genealogical record. But it might be a little bit easier given her last name. But again, it doesn't, well, that's not true. The framing was done. Oh, the framing was done in Ontario. Interesting. I actually would have thought that it would have been done in BC, but anyway, it must have been earlier in her life than when I knew her. Anyway, so there's an example of one where someone has signed their work versus where someone hasn't signed their work. And as you watch a variety of floss tubers, it's interesting as people are talking about the reproduction samplers that they're doing, and that they're trying to go back into records and find these people. Now, I don't know that I'm necessarily putting my age on anything, but I certainly am, if nothing else, putting my initials. Again, initials aren't necessarily going to help you with the genealogical records, but there are going to, I do have a sampler, my Ann Morrison. My plans are that I'm actually not going to put Ann Morrison's name on it. I am going to actually put my name on it. So it's going to have my information on it. So technically, if anybody was wanting to go back through the records, they could probably locate me. Also, because my last name is not common at all. It's not very complicated, but it is regularly misspelled. Anyway, so I'm advocating putting your, if nothing else, putting your initials into your piece. Just again, for things that get passed down, you know, even if you know, generations from now, if somebody said, oh, it was sort of one of my great aunts did this, but I've always loved the piece, you know, by the time, you know, you get to their grandchildren, it will probably, they won't necessarily have all the names, but at least if you've got your initials in the piece and they know it was, okay, my mom's great aunt or my grandmother's great aunt, it will at least let them go back through the genealogical records and go, okay, who was the stitcher that stitched this? So I'm just making my own personal I'm advocating that you put your initials in. It's your piece, do what works for you. There are no cross-stitch police, but I'm just advocating that you put that information in there. Also, you know, sometimes I've got ones where it's also interesting just looking back. You know, there was a piece that I stitched for my grandmother, and in my family, sort of once that person passes away, the stitch piece goes back to the person who stitched it. So when she passed away, it came back to me. And there are times that I look at it and I go, oh yeah, what year was I working on that? And the funny thing is, like, I remember that I was working on it while I was staying with one of my aunts while I was on a trip to Toronto. You know, so there are things where I remember these things about when I was stitching, but you have that moment was like, what year exactly was it? Well, it's okay, because I can go look at the piece because my initials are in it, as well as the year that I stitched it, and go, oh, right, that time. That's the year that well, it's the year that I finished it, not necessarily the year that I started it. And I don't, you know, back then I certainly wasn't keeping track of anything as to when anything got started, let alone, the finish date had the year that it was finished in. But other than that, I wasn't keeping track all that much. Whereas now I am keeping track of things, particularly in my Xstitch app, as to when they're started and when they're finished, as well as putting my initials and the year into the piece when it's stitched. Which is why also that Jubilee pin cushion one is a little bit harder for me, because, you know, that one is the Jubilee pin cushion, so it's got the dates of the Jubilee, but I didn't stitch it in the year of the Jubilee. Anyway, maybe I'll figure out a way to put it on the back. Anyway, but like I say, so, you know, back to my aunt's piece, you know, I can't get Grandma's initials into this at this point. So what I'm planning on doing is, like I say, is getting a big sticker that I can actually get all of the information about this, you know, what it's of, who it was for, who stitched it, all onto that sticker on the back. So anyway, that's my topic for this week. I'm going to wrap it up there. Sorry, just need to get this back into. All right. As always, thinking of the people of the Ukraine, also thinking very much of the people of Turkey and Syria, also thinking of a lot of the people who have gone over as aid workers. Certainly within my family sphere, we've got family friends, several of whom have headed over there. One of them is headed over for 4 months. So, you know, it's, you know that you're doing something positive. You're trying to provide that assistance and aid, but it is actually a very mentally taxing job to do. You're away from home. You're facing people who have had terrible things happen. And while you're trying to provide assistance, you know that their situation is hard and unpleasant, and you're away from friends and family, and you know, away from your home. And you know, we all know how many people like coming home and going, okay, I'm finally sleeping in my own bed. We all know that feeling. Home is best. But anyway, so thinking of the people of Turkey and Syria and everyone who is trying to provide aid and assistance to them, and thinking of the people of the Ukraine. As always, I hope you're staying safe. Safety first, safety first, safety first. I really do have a big kick of safety first. I've been, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, we're supposed to be getting quite a bit of snow. Some areas of the province are getting more snow than others. The roads are going to be unpleasant, certainly when it comes in that big of a dump, followed by bitterly cold temperatures. So the roads are going to be interesting here for a bit. So safety first to everyone. So I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're staying healthy. I hope you're finding some time to do some stitching, and that your stitching is bringing you joy, peace, contentment, a mental break, whatever you need it to be. I hope you're having a good time with your stitching, and that you are getting some stitches in. You don't have to make a ton of progress. Some stitch is always better than none. And I hope to see you next week. Take care.